Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Dan Mallock. He's a local presidential historian, written a very good book, Agony and Eloquence, about Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, their long friendship, their long estrangement, and then their friendship again at the end of their lives. Dan, a number of prominent, distinguished presidential historians, including Ken Burns and others, have sent out videos and messages opposing Donald Trump. Were you asked to participate in that effort?
No, I don't travel in such lofty circles, unfortunately.
Well, what are your thoughts about presidential historians getting involved in presidential campaigns?
I did see this video from Ron Chernow, the biographer of Hamilton, and I also saw it by David McCullough. I was very disappointed to see these very partisan, not inflammatory, but scary, oh, you know, things are very scary and don't vote for this candidate, very anti-Trump kind of message. It's very disappointing. I think a historian ought not to be so biased in their politics publicly. But like I was telling you before...
But don't historians have a right to express their own opinions? I mean, and in some cases that might be assumed to be an informed opinion because they've studied past presidents.
Yeah, of course, every author, historian has a right to an opinion, but once you express your bias, just like a journalist expressing a bias, then the objectivity of the person can reasonably be questioned. So as a scholar, a historian, you want to stay away from that as much as you possibly can. But I think these folks think that so much is at risk that they had no choice but to give their view in public.
Your comments seem to be a little bit more favorable between the two candidates to Trump. You feel like you're still being able to keep some objectivity about it to this point.
I think I'm as objective as I can be. I try to live the message of this book, which is a message of political acceptance and tolerance, and that I can retain my friendships with liberal and conservative friends and colleagues, which I have done for the most part. And I would say that Jefferson. I liked Adams personally more as a person than I did Jefferson, but I like his politics better. I'm like a Benjamin Rush, I kind of like Adams personally better, but like Jefferson's politics better. So I want to answer your question in this way by saying, if I want a political revolution in this country in a Jeffersonian tradition, I have no option but to vote for Mr. Trump.
Let's talk about revolution again in a different way. There's been a revolution in this last week, an open revolution. It's been simmering before between Donald Trump and many of the top members of his party in Washington. In fact, it's sort of been Trump versus Washington, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Is that sort of unprecedented? I mean, we're a month out before the election, and one of the parties is at war with itself. I don't ever remember seeing that in any textbooks.
Now, I can't think of a situation that's similar in history, in our history, but I think the establishment on both sides of the aisle are really concerned about Mr. Trump's lack of beholdenness to really anybody, so that when he gets into office, he doesn't owe anyone anything by way of favor or anything else. So this tends to marginalize the power of establishment political operatives and people and structures, so that both establishments are opposed to him.
But if Trump wins the presidency, he has to be effective and get his things through Congress. Paul Ryan's still going to be in Congress. If the Republicans hold the House, he'll still be Speaker of the House. If Donald Trump, let's say, wants to do something about his tax plan, he has to start that in the House of Representatives. Given the current relationship he has with Paul Ryan, what do you think the chances of any of that legislation moving in the House anywhere, as long as they're feuding with each other?
I think most anything that he has spoken about regarding his agenda is as possible as anything that Mrs. Clinton has talked about for her agenda. I think this
which means not very possible, given what the congressional gridlock is.
No, I didn't mean to say that, Pat. I think it's certainly very possible that he can get done what he says he can get done. This idea that he'll be opposed in the Congress and it'll be locked out like the Congress opposed President Obama, I don't think so. I think Mr. Trump's message of populism and anti-establishment view is really resonates with a great not majority, I don't know if it's a majority, great many of the people.
Let's talk a little bit about the future of the Republican Party. Obviously, if Trump wins, he'll be in control of the party. The party will continue in some form. But if he loses, is the Republican Party split up enough that it might become the 21st century Whig Party, which dissolved in the 1850s, largely over slavery?
I think when Mr. McCain was running, and due to his loss, that was the beginning of this kind of disintegration of the Republican Party. The party doesn't seem to represent the base anymore. So I think it's very splintered. If Mr. Trump loses, I think a great many of the base will abandon the party, maybe form another party, which I think would be fascinating and interesting. Most conservatives I know don't feel represented by the party apparatus or even the platforms, and certainly not the leadership.
So you think the possibility of America having, is America ready for a permanent third party? We've always liked choice in terms of being consumers when we go to the grocery store, and we've talked about liking third parties, but they never get voted for very much.
I have a great friend who is on the left in his politics, a great historian and scholar. You practically quoted him in a conversation I had with him several days ago. He thinks the two-party system doesn't work. He thinks it's long overdue to have at least another party that's viable.
So your thought is that we are going into even more perilous waters even after the election is over, at least for a while, to see how the country reunites?
You mean to say politically, domestically?
Yes.
I think so.
So what would you advise either one of the candidates to do if they are so lucky to be made president?
If I had the privilege to advise either candidate, I would say that we have to deal with the divisiveness in the culture first. The first project has to be a message of forgiveness, reunification, tolerance in the political world, saying, you know, if Mrs. Clinton wins, I am all of your president. I am the president of blacks, whites, Hispanics, LGBT, everyone in the country. I'm your president. I want to support you all. Same message from Donald.
And Mallock, thanks for coming in. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm sure we'll be talking about the coming presidency quite a bit with you.
I hope so. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics this week. Hope you can be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. The Zoo commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.